Well, with the G20 kicking off today, I believe, in France, I often refer to it as the traveling circus of tyranny, because that's really what it does. Every city that it goes to every year, they're pretty much not only conditioning the people and showing them the pure power and might that they have, they are also conditioning the police forces to go ahead and enforce all of these things. And of course, this is an area where a lot of people have learned about this group called the Black Bloc, as you mentioned. And as you'll see in my film, Into the Fire, these guys, pretty much anywhere where the Black Bloc was, police were nowhere to be found. What ended up happening is you had a group of about 70 or 80 of these guys who were pretty much given a green light to go ahead and rampage the city and smash up the banks and do whatever they want downtown. But that is what the elite wants. They want you to get out into the streets. They want you to start smashing things up, causing a big scene, a big ruckus, so that they can step in and say, whoa, look at these guys. Look how crazy this is. We're going to have to step in and deal with the situation. It all goes back to this whole order out of chaos concept, which they're doing now. And I do worry a little bit about the current Occupy movement. I've been speaking with a lot of the people here in Toronto, and I'm starting to feel it's kind of 50-50. I mean, there's a lot of people around here who are fully aware of the problems with fractional reserve banking. And, the Bank of Canada does have the ability to print its own money interest-free, but we don't do that. So a lot of people are aware of that. However, I'm still finding a lot of these people these anti-capitalist type people who are pushing for socialism and communism and kind of trying to steer the movement into a direction which is not going to help anyone. So certainly it's something we have to keep an eye on, because it's tough to say right now where this thing is going to go.
Yeah, but we do know they're offering all these global solutions, so many different groups, none of them officially speaking for the movement, are trying to draw people into, whether it's a global Tobin tax or whatever the solution may be, new global constitution, supposedly trying to democratize the IMF and other really awful hegemonic global institutions, Dan. That has to play into these G20 meetings. What are they aiming for specifically?
Well, that's why we need to get to the root of the problem. That's why people need to focus on what the real root of the problem is. And it's the issuance of currency out of thin air, the ability for private banks to print money and lend it out at interest. People are aware that our whole financial institutions are a major problem. That's why there's such huge protests that come out to the G20 summits. So again, we just need to continue to raise awareness about what some of the what we feel the real issues are, and hopefully. People in this occupation movement are paying attention, and they'll start working towards these solutions, which are actually going to benefit the people and not the very system that they're fighting against.
Yeah, we'll see how this all develops. But of course, another thing these groups like the IMF have done have really cast a wide net that gradually over time draws in all these client states into this New World Order system, really making us all debt slaves. And so if we don't figure this out, the end of it all is going to be coming soon. But of course, everything's changing right now. We got the whole European zone in crisis, and they're ready to blame the people for not accepting this debt for the whole fall, the next part of the crash. But we know who set this up. We know who designed it. Yeah, for sure. And we have a fairly good idea of where this could potentially lead. One aspect of the occupation movement that somewhat worries me is how it all kind of could potentially tie into this new age type of movement and type of agenda about this unified consciousness concept and having the whole world unified globally under one particular issue. I think people need to be careful and be aware that it's very quite possible that sometimes some things within the truth movement could be used as that vehicle that the New World Order needs. I have hope that, because I have hope that people are going to do the right thing. I mean,
things are going well because people are getting out in the streets. That's the beautiful thing, basically. I mean, people are getting active. People are getting out in the streets. They're realizing things need to change. And that's a good thing. We just have to be careful that when this gets onto a massive global kind of scale with everybody on the same page, we got to remember that's part of the goals of the New World Order. So it's a tricky one, but we got to watch out for that.
Yeah, well said, Dan. Why don't you tell us about some of the stuff you've seen in the past at these G20 events with the police provocateurs, how they were identified, and what kind of divisive actions they caused so people can look out for it in the future?
Sure. My first experience with that was actually in 2007 in Montebello for the SPP summit. I went there to cover it, and that's when the infamous 3 agent provocateurs were caught red-handed, dressed up as aggressive protesters. They had the masks and the rocks in their hands, and the Quebec police ended up admitting to it, and they were totally caught red-handed, and it opened up Canadians' eyes to the fact that the Canadian government is willing to go to these lengths, these fascist lengths, in order to stifle and to silence a legitimate protest. So it's a common tactic that is being used to try to silence the people, and there's no doubt that there's a good possibility that a lot of that took place at the G20 in Toronto. When you have a group like the Black Bloc, it's so perfectly convenient for that type of a situation. And as you'll see in our film Into the Fire, there are some very questionable clips where members of the Black Bloc can be seen running behind a police line where the police, are blocking off the protesters from the police, and you'll see a couple guys in Black Bloc clothing go running through the line. So that raises an eyebrow, and that gets us wondering, what exactly is going on? It's so hard when you have 22 different jurisdictions of police came into the city that day, that weekend, from all over Canada. So these guys they're not listening to their regular bosses. They're listening to the piece in their ear. When they're told to march west, they're going to march west. When they're told to go and kettle this small group of people, they're going to do it and not really question their orders. So that's another big part of the problem, and another way that the Black Bloc is able to go in and do their things. I mean, there was stand-down orders here in Toronto. Some of the police have come out and said, we were told, do not engage. So again, they were just listening to the piece in their ear, and I think a lot of the police around here felt that they themselves were manipulated. They had to carry out this Public Works Protection Act law, which ended up being a big lie. We were all led to believe that we couldn't film within 5 meters of this fence, and that we had to present our ID at pretty much any time. It turns out that's not the case. It turned out not to be true. Toronto Chief Bill Blair at the time came out and admitted, yeah, you know what? Well, I was just trying to keep the bad guys out, so we did what we had to do. So some of the things that went on at the G20 there in Toronto, just unbelievable. And we did our best to document the whole event pretty much chronologically throughout the entire weekend. So if you want to see it for yourself, we have it online. You can go on YouTube, just type in Into the Fire, and of course you can get the DVD at Infowars.com or PressForTruth.ca. And we encourage you to do that because we went all out on this particular DVD. We got hours and hours of extras, extended interviews, and a lot of special features and behind-the-scenes stuff. So if you want to support us, pick one up from PressForTruth.ca or Infowars.com. But if you'd like to just see it for yourself, just go onto YouTube and check it out, and you'll see what I'm talking about.
And of course, it is important to support all the great Infowars activists out there. That's how we help build each other up and how we get that word out. That's how we reach everyone. And here we are at 3 o'clock. I believe that puts us 16 hours into this marathon transition. transmission. I just want to make sure we thank all the people out there who've been giving money to us, who've been helping us grow, those who can't give money, spreading the word, sharing the link to this broadcast. It's not too late to do that. Also sharing all the free films that are out there from Alex Jones. We sell them on DVD also, but they're available on YouTube and the other platforms, Dan Dick's Film and the rest of them. And it's so important to get that word out. Right now we see the current G20 meeting in Cannes. A lot of the protesters there say they're joining up with the Occupy protesters who are now worldwide. And then at the same time, we see in New York City, for instance, the police being bought really in many cases as a private security to work with the Wall Street firms to keep those protesters under check and just more generally to occupy the downtown area with their own surveillance and police state grid that is privately driven but also uses public resources. And so that's something to keep an eye on. But if you believe in this InfoWars mission, it's important you either donate or otherwise help us grow in one way or another. We have to reach more people while we still have time, while we have access to these wonderful platforms, the double-edged sword that technology gives us as things change and hopefully don't move further into this global state. They've sold us on globalization, saying how great it is, that somehow, although it's flawed, it'll eventually become a benefit for everyone. But at the same time, we've seen a race to the bottom. Nobody really focuses on how they've shipped out the jobs, deindustrialized the U.S., shipped the jobs to China, where there's agreements for basically slave labor in many cases, and just really cheap products that don't build up the country. Something may be cheaper at Walmart, but it doesn't allow an interchange of decentralized independent businesses to grow. It doesn't. It sucks out really the backbone of America and leaves just that corporate facade running our whole country. Everything has really kind of hollowed out in that way. It's time we admit it, and it's time we do something about it. Dan Dix, your comments.
Yeah, absolutely. Another area which the globalization is fast-tracking its way right now is in regards to the North American Union. I mean, this agenda has been on the table for a long, long time now. And recently, even in the last few weeks, a lot of things are coming together. I believe it's called the interstate, the I-69, pretty much the NAFTA superhighway, is nearing completion. That's definitely underway. And that's something that we have to be very aware of, cautious of, and vigilant of here in Canada, U.S., and Mexico. And again, that's another topic that we've covered in United We Fall, is this whole concept of those three countries coming in together, very similar to what we saw with the European Union. So yeah, they're ramping up their efforts as well. So that's why it is so important at this time to continue the fight. And I would encourage people also to do whatever you can to donate to the Money Bomb at Infowars.com. It's amazing what you guys have been able to do in the 15 years that you've been doing this, and especially since last Money Bomb, you've expanded your operation in such a huge way. It's very impressive. It's very encouraging. It's very awe-inspiring. And I want to encourage people to do the same as well, Aaron.
Yeah, and you mentioned the NAFTA superhighways. That's one of the many areas where we fought back. We've said no. We've told them we don't want this North American Union. They said it doesn't exist. People continue to bring out the agenda, and they've continued to play possum. I know here in Texas, there was really a rally cry that they had been defeated, that the whole project was somehow called off. But then if you drive down highways, I know I went down Highway 77 that goes down to South Padre Island and so forth, and it tells you how the new NAFTA super corridor is soon to be coming in, toll roads that they're putting up. So they're still moving this agenda forward, not always calling it what they originally were calling it. And with the larger North American Union, you've seen that fought back, but at the same time, you've seen greater border things coming forward, the stuff with the drug cartels. Fast and Furious ties into that. Dan Dix.
Yeah, of course, they're going to continue to tell us that this is going to be for our benefit. This is going to be beneficial for trade. It's going to move goods and services in and out of the countries quicker and easier.
But again, this is the facade. This is what they're trying to make you believe. Really, it's all about, the end game is joining the three together.